The entire class was in on it. All of us sat there, completely silent, as our teacher, Mr. Harrison, announced that our final project was due in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Across the room, I watched the color literally drain from my so-called best friend's face as she realized what was happening. Her mouth fell open in a silent gasp of pure, raw panic. She looked at me, her eyes wide, begging, pleading for an answer. I just looked back, kept my face a perfect blank, and gave a tiny, almost invisible shrug. She'd refused to help me when I needed her, when my entire world was falling apart. Now she was about to learn the hard way what happens when you betray someone. But to really get how we got to this perfect, beautiful moment of karmic justice, we have to go back 3 weeks. But before we get into the whole story, if you've ever had a friend who turned out to be a snake, or if you just love a good story about someone getting exactly what they deserve, do me a solid and smash that like button. And make sure you resubscribed, because you are not going to want to miss the fallout from this. For the longest time, my friendship with Annie was the kind you see in movies, on the surface anyway. We met freshman year and instantly bonded over hating geometry and loving the same obscure bands. By senior year, we were basically a package deal. Our lockers were side by side, we had most of the same classes, and we spent almost every lunch period splitting a bag of salt and vinegar chips while dissecting the latest school drama. She was the person I'd text at 2 a.m. with a random thought, the one who knew my exact coffee order, the person I genuinely thought would be my maid of honor someday. It felt real. The most important class for us this year was AP European History with Mr. Harrison. It was notoriously hard, with a crazy workload where your final grade was almost entirely based on one massive project. We were a team in that class, or so I thought. We'd study together, quiz each other on French dynasties, and complain endlessly about all the reading. Annie was always right there with me, seeming just as invested as I was. Looking back, of course, the red flags were everywhere. They were tiny, sure, almost see-through, just waving softly in the background. Little things, like how she'd always forget her wallet when we went out to eat, laughing it off with a charming, "You're a lifesaver! I'll get you next time." But next time never came. Or how she'd borrow my favorite sweater, swear she'd return it tomorrow, and I wouldn't see it for a month until I had to literally go to her house and dig it out of her laundry basket. There was this subtle, constant pattern of manipulation that I was just too trusting to see. She was an absolute master of the guilt trip. If I couldn't hang out because I had to work, she'd sigh dramatically and go, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll just go by myself then," making me feel like the worst friend on earth for having responsibilities. Her problems were always epic tragedies that needed my full, undivided attention. But whenever I had a problem, I'd get a distracted nod, and she'd quickly change the subject back to her. It was her classic move, making me feel responsible for her happiness while she took zero responsibility for mine. But I made excuses for her. I told myself that's just Annie, you know? A little dramatic, a little self-centered, but still my best friend. I was her rock. I just didn't realize it was a one-way street. I didn't realize I was being used. The moment the whole facade didn't just crack but completely shattered happened on a Tuesday. I got a call during third period. It was my dad. His voice was tight with a kind of fear I'd never heard before. My grandma, who lived a few hours away, had a massive stroke. She was in the ICU, and the doctors weren't sure she would make it through the night. My whole world just tilted. I remember stumbling out of the classroom, unable to breathe, feeling like the walls were closing in. My parents were already heading to the hospital, and I had to pack a bag and meet them. I did what any student would do. I spent a frantic hour emailing all my teachers, explaining the emergency and trying to get my assignments. Most of them were amazing, offering extensions and condolences. But Mr. Harrison S. class was different. His lectures were packed with info you couldn't find in the textbook, and he never posted his notes. I missed Tuesday and knew I'd miss Wednesday and Thursday too. 3 of his lectures was like missing a whole chapter. Panic started to set in, the stress about my grandma mixing with pure academic dread. I was drowning. And then, one thought cut through the noise. Annie, my best friend. She was in the class, and I thought she always took perfect notes. It was the one part of this whole nightmare that felt solvable. I could count on her. My hands were shaking as I texted her. Hey, I have a massive favor. My grandma had a stroke. I'm going out of town for a few days. I'm so stressed about missing Harrison S. class. Could you please send me pics of your notes from today, Wednesday, and Thursday? You would literally save my life. She replied almost instantly. OMG, that is awful. So sorry to hear about your grandma. Hope she's okay. A tiny bit of relief washed over me. Of course she'd help. I texted back. Thank you. It is really bad. And thanks so much for the notes. You're a lifesaver. And then crickets. An hour went by. I told myself she was just busy. A few hours later, I was at home, numbly throwing clothes in a bag when my phone buzzed. It was her. Hey, so about the notes, my handwriting is so messy, you literally would not be able to read it. It was a weak excuse, but I was too overwhelmed to fight. Honestly, anything is better than nothing. I can figure it out, I promise. Another long pause. Then, ugh, I'm also just so swamped with other homework. I don't think I'll have time to organize them and send them. It's a lot. She was playing the victim to get out of doing a simple task. My heart just sank. This wasn't a simple no. This was a choice, a deliberate refusal disguised as an inconvenience. The betrayal was a physical ache in my chest. She knew what I was going through. She knew how much I needed this. I sent one last desperate text. Annie, please. I'm begging you. Ivy helped you study for every single test we've ever had. Her final reply was the nail in our friendship's coffin. I feel so bad, I really do. But it's just not a good time for me. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Let me know how your grandma is. The fakeness was breathtaking. That casual dismissal, the empty sympathy with zero action, it was a brutal lesson in what a real friend isn't. I just sat on my floor, surrounded by my half-packed suitcase, and felt the full weight of what she'd done. Not only was I terrified about my grandmother, but I was now completely alone in my academic panic, abandoned by the one person I thought I could count on for anything. The next few days were a blur of hospital waiting rooms and hushed conversations with doctors. Thankfully, my grandma stabilized, but it was clear she had a long road ahead. I got home late Friday night, emotionally and physically drained, with the weight of all that missed schoolwork crushing me. The hurt from Annie S. betrayal had been festering, turning from shock into a cold, hard anger. When I walked into school on Monday, I was dreading seeing her. Of course, she ran right up to me at my locker and wrapped me in this hug that felt so fake it made my skin crawl. Oh my God, I'm so glad you're back. How's your grandma? I was so worried. She was trying to gaslight me, to make me feel like I'd imagined her coldness and that I was the one overreacting. For a second, I almost fell for it. Maybe she was just busy, but then I remembered how desperate I was and how empty her replies were. No, I wasn't wrong. She is stable, I said flatly, pulling away. I need to get to class. Later, I was in the library trying to piece together the French Revolution from the textbook alone, but it was useless. I felt completely defeated. Then I saw another classmate from AP Euro, a quiet, nice guy named Leo. On a whim, I walked over. Hey, Leo, I started, feeling kind of embarrassed. This is a long shot, but I was out last week. My grandma was in the hospital. Is there any chance I could get the notes from Harrison S. class? I am totally lost. Leo S. face immediately softened. Oh man, of course. Is she okay? He actually waited for me to answer, looking genuinely concerned. After I explained, he didn't even hesitate. Yeah, no problem at all. I'll just airdrop them to you. He pulled out his iPad, and seconds later, 3 documents of perfectly organized notes popped up on my phone. I honestly could have cried. Thank you so much, Leo. You have no idea. I actually asked Annie, but she said she was too busy. Leo frowned. Annie, that's weird. She was sitting right next to me? He paused, then leaned in a little. To be honest, I don't think she took any notes. She was on her phone shopping for prom dresses the whole time. And there it was, the final proof. She wasn't too busy. Her handwriting wasn't too messy. She just flat out lied. She lied to me during one of the worst weeks of my life because she couldn't be bothered to do the smallest, easiest thing for a friend. The anger I'd been feeling turned into something else, a desire for justice. Leo saw the look on my face. That is really messed up, he said. The story spread, but not because I was gossiping. Leo was mad for me, and people in our class respected him. He told his friend Sarah, who sat on the other side of Annie. Sarah confirmed it. Oh yeah, she was showing me pictures of shoes while Mr. Harrison was talking about the reign of terror. Within a day, it felt like the entire 30-person class knew, and everyone had the same reaction. Disgust? It turned out I wasn't the only one. So many of them had their own Annie stories of being used or manipulated by her. Mine was just the final straw. A week later, Mr. Harrison made an announcement. Just a reminder, folks, he said. Your final project submission will be a culmination of everything we've discussed, especially from the last few weeks. Be prepared, no excuses. He didn't give a date. He never did. That was his thing. But we all knew it could be any day. And in that moment, an idea sparked. It started with just a look I shared with Leo across the room. He gave me this slow, deliberate nod. Then Sarah caught my eye and gave a small, firm smile. A silent, unspoken pact rippled through the room. Annie, meanwhile, was on her phone, completely oblivious. Nobody said a word. There was no group chat, no secret meeting. It was just this organic, collective decision. We would all finish our projects. We would all be ready. And we would all keep our mouths shut. We wouldn't be cruel. We wouldn't taunt her. We would simply give her what she gave me. Nothing. We were going to let her face the consequences of her own actions. This wasn't about revenge. It was about letting karma do its thing. We were all in on the plan, and the final day was getting closer. If you want to see how this epic classroom takedown actually happened, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because you don't want to miss what comes next. Now, let us get to the best part. D-Day arrived on a Thursday. You could feel the electricity in the air as we filed into class. It was that quiet, humming tension right before a thunderstorm. Everyone knew what was probably coming. I saw people double-checking their files, making sure everything was ready to go. Everyone was prepared. Everyone except one person. Annie strolled in a minute after the bell, latte in hand, looking completely unbothered. She flopped into her seat and immediately started scrolling Instagram, blissfully ignorant. She probably figured the project was still weeks away, a problem for future Annie. She even smiled at me, a breezy, "Hey," like nothing had ever happened. I just gave her a little nod back, my heart starting to pound. This was it. Mr. Harrison waited for the class to settle. "Good morning, everyone," he said, a grim smile on his face. "I hope you all came prepared today." He paused for dramatic effect. "Your final project is a key component of your grade. The guidelines have been on the syllabus since day one." He clapped his hands together, a sharp final sound. "All right, the submission portal is now open. You have 10 minutes to upload your projects. It closes automatically at 9:15 a.m. No exceptions." The room burst into quiet, organized chaos. Laptops opened, files were clicked, and the soft tapping of 29 keyboards filled the silence. And in the middle of it all was Annie. Her head shot up at the word submission. Her whole body went rigid. I watched her face cycle through confusion, then dawning horror, and finally, pure ice-cold panic. Her terrified eyes darted around the room, seeing a sea of focused faces and open laptops. She saw me calmly uploading my file. She saw Leo hit submit with a satisfied click. Her face, which had been perfectly tan, was now chalk white. "What project?" she whispered frantically to the boy next to her. He just gave her a wide-eyed, helpless shrug and turned back to his screen. Her head whipped around to me, her eyes screaming, "Help me! Do something!" The same help I had begged her for. I met her gaze. I held it for a long second. And then I gave her the tiniest, coldest shrug I could manage, a perfect mirror of her own dismissal. And I turned back to my laptop. That S when she broke. She shot up from her seat. "Mr. Harrison, wait." He looked up, completely unimpressed. "Yes, Ms. Anderson?" I didn't know it was due today. I thought we had more time," she stammered, her voice cracking. "I'm not ready." "The instructions to be prepared for a surprise submission have been clear for weeks, Ms. Anderson," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "This project is 40% of your final grade. The deadline is in 7 minutes. Her face just crumpled. Tears started streaming down her cheeks as she stood there, completely exposed, completely unprepared, and completely alone. The rest of us just kept typing, a silent, unified front of righteous justice. Those 10 minutes felt like an eternity and an instant, all at once. The clock hit 9:15 a.m. and the portal closed. Annie had spent the whole time desperately whispering to people who wouldn't look at her and trying to plead with Mr. Harrison, who just kept telling her to sit down. When the bell rang, the tension finally broke. I packed my bag, feeling weirdly calm. As I turned to leave, she was right there, her face tear-streaked and furious. She grabbed my arm. "How could you do this to me?" she hissed. "You're my best friend. You let me fail." It was the classic move. Flip the script and make herself the victim. But I wasn't the same person I was 3 weeks ago. I wasn't going to fall for her guilt trip. I looked down at her hand on my arm and then looked her dead in the eye. "How could I do this?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet as I pulled my arm away. "I called you, crying, from a hospital, begging you for notes because my grandmother might be dying. And you, my best friend, lied to my face and said you were too busy when you were actually shopping for shoes." Her face fell. The anger vanished, replaced by a flicker of actual shame. "This wasn't some big revenge plot, Annie," I continued. "This was you. Nobody here owed you a reminder. We just all chose not to help you. The same way you chose not to help me. This isn't revenge. This is karma. You're reaping what you sow." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The cold, simple truth was more powerful than any shouting match. I turned and walked out, leaving her speechless in the middle of the empty classroom. The social fallout was swift, but it wasn't cruel. Nobody bullied her. Instead, she was just met with indifference. People stopped answering her texts. No one invited her to sit with them at lunch. She had made herself an island, and now she was completely stranded on it. The semester ended a week later. I passed the class with a solid B, which I was incredibly proud of, considering everything. Annie, with a 0 on 40 of her grade, failed. She'd have to retake it in summer school to graduate on time. The perfect world she'd built for herself, held up by everyone else's work, had crumbled the second we all stopped holding it up for her. The whole thing was painful, and that betrayal left a scar. It took a while to get over the anger of being let down so badly by someone I trusted. But it also taught me a huge lesson. It taught me to see people for who they really are, not who I want them to be. It taught me how to set boundaries and to spot the red flags of manipulation. I learned that a real friendship is a two-way street, built on respect and support, not just on convenience. My friendships now are fewer, but they're so much deeper. Leo and I became really good friends. My relationship with my family got even stronger because I realized they were my true support system. In a weird way, what Annie did was a gift. It was a painful gift, but it forced me to grow up. It stripped away my naivety and gave me resilience and a much stronger sense of my own worth. The moral of the story isn't about how satisfying revenge is. It's about the quiet power of karma. True friends are the ones who show up when life gets hard, not just when it is fun. It is way better to have one true friend who will metaphorically hold your hand in a hospital waiting room than 100 fake ones who one day even send you a page of notes. In the end, our class didn't team up to destroy Annie. We just stopped holding her up. We let her fall, and the landing was all her own. The silence of 30 people was more powerful than any angry words could ever be. It was a lesson in accountability that I don't think she'll ever forget. And honestly, I won't either. So, I have to ask you, what would you have done? Would you have warned her? Or would you have let karma do its thing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.